Hey y'all, it's Nat. I hope you're having a terrific day today. And for this video, we're going to be doing a reading vlog in which I am trying out a different reading routine. Alright, so before I get into anything bookish, make sure to hit like and subscribe down below, as well as tell me in the comments, how many books do you tend to read at once? Do you have one book on your table that you consistently go back to, or do you have a stack of books? Let's talk about it. Alright, so this is a video idea that I've kind of been sitting on for a while, which is changing up my reading routine, and I ended up getting a great idea to kind of play with this off of a recommendation video from Susan Carolyn, I believe. I'll go ahead and pop up her short, but basically she was trying to talk about ways to read more, and one of her ideas was to have a different book for every situation and like a different book for every part of your day, which was something I really thought was interesting. I tend to read 2 to 3 books at a time. Usually it's like I have an audiobook, maybe I'll read it physically or an ebook as well, and then normally I'll have a secondary book. As of late, that tends to be an ebook, or occasionally I might have a physical copy going, but I usually only float around like 2 to maybe 3 books. However, with this idea, I'd be working through like 4 to 5 books at a time. And I thought this would be very interesting to sort of try out. This actually be more beneficial and productive for my reading life. I'm not sure. So I've actually been doing this for, well, going on 3 weeks now, I guess, technically. I had a part 1 video, which is actually exclusive to my Patreon. And then I was going to roll into this second part for y'all, but I ended up getting the flu, which was unexpected and definitely kind of threw my whole reading routine up in the air. So yesterday I finally was feeling better and I decided to sort of restart this. So starting from the top, one of the recommendations Susan Carolyn had was to start your day by reading a nonfiction book because it feels sort of like reading the newspaper. I've been currently working through Men, Women, and Chainsaws by Carol J. Clover. I've been in the middle of this for months now, so I'm finally actually making some good progress. Usually I have been starting my day by popping on my coffee and then I sit down and read for 20 minutes. I'm not reading a ton, but at the very least, every single day I am getting a little bit read into this and I'm continuing to really enjoy it. This is discussing gender in slasher films from like the 70s and 80s, and it's been a fascinating read. I do think it actually has really been helping me to start my day reading a nonfiction book because it feels like my brain is sort of turning on a little bit earlier, especially with a book like this where the writing itself is definitely on the denser side. It's pretty academic. There's lots of footnotes. There was this one today. This is all notes. This is all footnotes. And every time I do pick this up, it really does have me thinking. And I actually will say this is the first book I've annotated in a while where I've consistently had notes to write in the margins as well. Right now I'm in chapter 3. She is talking about SA revenge films. And this is really interesting to look at because at the time, like that was a really big deal that they were starting to tell those sorts of stories where a female character could be so unapologetic and really vengeful, especially in the first example she utilizes, I Spit on Your Grave. At no point in the story is there ever any debate around like the morals and ethics of what's happening. It is only ever seen as the main character getting her vengeance. But of course, the story itself would not exist if she was not the victim of a very brutal crime. But especially as of late, I feel like we're really pulling away from that being utilized to initiate a character arc for female characters, pushing against that thought process of trauma being necessary, along with it, like fridging of female characters, usually where a female character is taken out as a means for character development of a male character. And that is something that writers, I think, have been doing for a very long time. So this is really interesting to kind of look at the analysis of the film from when it was still kind of a newer thing in comparison to, like I said, the like shift we're having away from those sorts of stories right now. But I also really like in this one that she is talking about how the way it is showcased is done to make male audiences uncomfortable and really elicit emotions from them that they do not often feel. Because one major point of this book thus far is that the intended audience for a lot of slasher films was always assumed to be young men. Literally every single chapter of this book has had me thinking so deeply. This is the book that I've been starting my days with. I only got 8 pages of this read today. And like I said, usually I'm only reading for about 20 minutes. However, since I was feeling better yesterday and it was a Sunday, I got up and I actually just kind of read until I officially finished out a chapter for like, I think maybe a little bit over an hour. And I read about 40 pages, which is great. I've not really gotten out of bed and started my day reading like that in a while. So that's fantastic. I really hope I can maintain this sort of momentum. Then an interesting element I have also added into this is that I want to have a physical book to read, but I want that book to mostly be what I'm reading when I'm home. And then I want to have my ebook be a book that I'm reading whenever I am out on the go. So I took my Kobo with me today for lunch, and I ended up reading some more into The Legacy of Molly Southbourne. This is the final in the Molly Southbourne series by Tade Thompson. I did actually officially finish that one out on lunch too. And unfortunately, I do gotta say, I didn't really love how the story ended up closing out in this final installment. Such a shame, because the first half of this final one, I was sucked in and I was so intrigued. And there was even a really big twist, I guess a big reveal in the second half while I was reading today, which had me so hooked, so curious about like, how is this going to wrap up? How was a resolution going to happen between these characters? A resolution happened, but like, I don't think it was really done in a very interesting way. And there was like so many questions I still had, and it just was not satisfying. Then there's an epilogue chapter, and any outstanding questions kind of get like a throwaway answer to just close everything out. And again, it just wasn't satisfying. But at the very least, I officially finished out a trilogy, I guess. Naturally, I also have to have an audiobook going. So right now, the audiobook I'm listening to, I just started into 𝗖cie by Lamar Giles this morning. Is it Giles? Giles? This is one of my Star Wars novels, and it's actually following the crew from the Bad Batch, and it basically just feels like it's an additional adventure between season 2 and season 3 that didn't get animated. And I'm not complaining. I'm actually really enjoying it. I do like the fact that you can tell the narrator is really doing his best to try and match the voices of all these characters from the TV show, even though he is not from New Zealand, so he doesn't have the perfect accent, but he's really doing his best. And I am definitely enjoying that one so far. I just love the little found family of the Bad Batch crew, so I'm absolutely here for anything that gets me more of them. Then when it comes to physically reading, I am also doing March Manga Madness right now. So I'm trying to make the books that I am reading in the evening for right now be manga. I do also have the Spite House, which is the pick for our Book Dragons book club, and our meeting for that is in like a week or two, and so I probably do need to get a start into it. So technically right now I have 4 books going at this moment, which again is more than normal for me, but not so much that I am totally overwhelmed. I haven't felt like I've been lost in anything I've been reading thus far, which is good. And thankfully I've also maintained interest in all the books I'm reading, so that's probably helpful as well. I don't know if I would say at this point that I'm really reading more with the schedule, but it does kind of feel like I'm being a little bit more intentional with my reading. Maybe I'm thinking more about trying to make time for reading. That said, I also just got over being sick, and I'm like really jumping at the bit to be productive right now. So it's possible, like as the week goes on, this feeling and this excitement to kind of maintain the schedule will slowly be lost, and that might change. We'll see. Hello, my loves. Good morning. It's Wednesday, and I hope you're having a really good day. I had an off day today because I have a few appointments going on, and then for dinner this afternoon, I'm taking my niece out to celebrate her birthday. So my regular schedule is just kind of already thrown out of whack. I did continue on yesterday into Men, Women, and Chainsaws. I'm still really liking the chapter focusing on 𝗖cie revenge films. I feel like I actually ended up reading a lot more than normal yesterday. This one overall is actually just kind of really hard to talk about without getting dinged by YouTube, just because of the nature of the chapter. And now I do like that author is kind of diving into the discussion around city versus rural divide that there seems to be in a lot of these films, especially because I feel like that's something I can really easily tie into one of my favorite horror movies, Tucker and Dale versus Evil, seeing as how that's like the basis of the story.
We have had a doozy of a day.
A real doozy.
Then I have continued on with 𝗖cie, the Star Wars novel, and this is just so much freaking fun that it's really not a trial at all for me to pop in the audiobook and start listening to it. If anything, now I'm actually like itching to get back to it because there's some wild events and some reveals that we've had. And I'm really intrigued to see where things are going to be going. The biggest problem I am having right now is I want to have an ebook going and then a physical book going. That was the initial plan. And then that's kind of what I was doing in the first week of my trying this routine. But the thing that is kind of tripping me up is the fact that I'm also trying to do March Manga Madness. And with manga, a lot of the times I end up just like sitting down and blasting through one. So while technically I do have 3 different books going right now, it doesn't feel like I do because every time I'm reading any manga, I finish it almost immediately. And though the last time I talked to you, I was saying I wanted to start Into the Spite House, I have yet to do that. Instead, I did get further distracted by manga. So did I tell you guys about Mobsters in Love Volume 1? So I read Volume 1 and I really liked it. And then I wasn't planning to, but I ended up starting into the second volume and I read about half of it before I went to bed, which, hey, at the very least, I was focused on like reading something from my TBR, but I wish I would have taken that time to be reading The Spite House because I'm reading a lot of manga on Libby right now. So I had that be my ebook when I was at work yesterday and I finished out that volume. Really, really enjoyed it. Also, it was super cute. There's like one specific element of it that I'm not the biggest fan of. So I finished that and I was really hoping, okay, maybe tonight I will start Into Spite House. No, didn't happen. Instead, I ended up starting into another manga and I actually ended up blasting through, I think it's called Mr. Villain's Day Off, Volume 1. And this is also super cute. It's very slice of life, easygoing. So while I'm really proud of myself that I'm actually doing some decent reading lately, I'm still like kicking myself because it's not quite matching the routine I wanted to be building with this. However, the biggest one so far, I will say, is really this like starting my day by reading a nonfiction book. Today is the first time I haven't done that since I got over being sick, actually. And I really feel like my whole day is kind of thrown off because of it. But like I said, my schedule was just a little bit up in the air today, so I didn't have the time, unfortunately. And I'm really glad that that is bugging me, which is so weird to say. Hello, my dudes. So it's Saturday. Yeah, it's been a minute since I've talked to you guys. I'm so sorry about that. I do feel like as far as this reading challenge, this reading routine, this experiment, whatever you want to call it, as far as it goes, I'm actually probably doing the best right now that I have been since I started it, which is great. I'm actually reading a fair amount of books at once. So starting at the top, one that I was very proud of myself was I finally have officially picked up an ebook again and have an ebook consistently going. This one's been a little bit complicated since I'm also reading a lot of manga on my phone. So like I have technically had an ebook going, and while it was similar, it wasn't really matching with what I was hoping to be doing by having an ebook going. So I've officially started into Good Duke Gone Wild by Bethany Bennett on my Kobo, and I read a fair amount of this on Thursday during my lunch, and then today I went and had my hair lightened up a little bit, so I was at the hairdressers for longer, and I did continue reading it there as well. Like I said, this is a development. I'm very proud of myself, but I think something that's kind of funny also is a unexpected pattern, I suppose I'll say, I noticed from this whole situation. I think the most difficult time for me when reading a book when it comes to motivation is when I'm starting into a new book, which is very odd because I would say pretty across the board for this whole project, I've consistently been reading books I was excited to pick up, but even still, it's like there's some sort of a mental block for myself, especially when I have other ones already ongoing. It's like my brain keeps going back to, I have these other ones I'm in the middle of that I need to finish first before I start something else. But obviously with this challenge, the whole point was to have numerous books going at once. So I guess that kind of does go actually hand in hand with this project. So that was an interesting takeaway to notice about myself. But again, like the very least, ebook started, continued. Then unfortunately, I didn't get my reading into Men, Women, and Chainsaws done on Wednesday because of my weird schedule. I also didn't get it done on Thursday because I just didn't want to get out of bed, honestly, which if anything, I will say I'm very surprised it took that long for me to not do that because I'm not a morning person. I did actually get up on Friday. I really liked that section too because I had this very interesting perspective where the author is discussing the demonizing of the other character and the evolution of how that character has been represented over the years. Initially, she kind of starts out by talking about the connections between slasher films with actually Westerns, particularly when it came to demonizing Native Americans, but then now tying back to the discussion around the divide between city and country folk, she kind of explains the transition from like the Redskins to rednecks. And I thought that was really interesting. In fact, if I had the motivation, I was hoping to get up this morning and try to read it before I headed to my hair appointment. But instead, I laid in bed reading fan fiction for too long. It's fine. It's a Saturday, still being nice to myself, but continuing to go really freaking well. And I'm finally making some actually good progress with this. This is the main element of this challenge I'm really hoping I will continue doing because this has actually been so great for me and it feels like I'm making decent progress into this nonfiction book even if I'm only reading a few pages a day. Then when it comes to audiobooks, unsurprisingly, I always do fairly well with these. I did officially finish out 𝗖cie, the Star Wars novel, on Thursday. Really liked this across the board. Ended in a very satisfying way. I have like the tiniest of a complaint about characterization. So this was great. I managed to finish out my audiobook, which was fantastic. But I did then have this trouble of like, okay, what audiobook do I want to pick up next? But I will say that problem did not come about because I was lacking in motivation. It was more because of reading plans and video plans that was making it difficult. Initially, I was considering trying to start into the audiobook of 𝗖cie House because I actually did get my hold in from the library. But seeing as I'm reading this for a book club, I would really prefer to read it physically. So I did start into it on my lunch break on Friday, which is good. However, it's very ironic that I say that and I've had this whole back and forth of like, what format am I going to read this in? The library gods have decided for me. This is due in like 3 days and I do not think I'm going to finish it in 3 days reading it physically with how that specific type of reading has been going for me lately. So chances are I'm going to have to read it on audio anyway. But what I've read so far, I am intrigued by. We're following this father and his 2 daughters who are on the run from something. We're not quite sure what that is. He has been taking on different jobs in the time they've been traveling from Maryland down to Texas. And now he has applied to stay in this incredibly haunted house known as the 𝗖cie House. And hopefully he will get the job and he and his daughters can stay there. But of course, I'm guessing something mysterious and terrifying will happen because it's a horror book. Since I didn't start into the audiobook on that one, instead I decided to start into the audiobook for the final Lord of the Rings novel, and that is Return of the King by J.R.R. Tolkien. This is actually the pick for my Patreon book club. We're officially closing out this series in March, and I'm really excited. I'm very excited for this. I've gotten about an hour in, and right now we are returned to the bigger group of the Fellowship, though actually I don't even know if I would really say that because we're mostly focused on Gandalf and Pippin right now. Oh, well, Pippin is kind of an idiot. At the very least, I do like everything we are learning through Pippin. So we're still very early stages, but thus far this is going pretty well. And between all of those, I have actually squeezed in a few other manga volumes too. So if I'm being honest, I probably will not get too much more read today before I need to close this vlog out. So I figure we may as well do it now. Main takeaways from this, as I said, I really want to stick to the nonfiction reading first thing in the morning. I need to work on this whole motivation whenever I'm starting into a new book thing. In fact, I think I may actually try to maintain this for right now. And thankfully, I haven't really mixed anything up. I've not gotten confused about any of the books I've read. I think having different formats for everything definitely is helping with that. Apart from starting into a new book, I don't feel like I've lost motivation with any of the books that I'm reading. If anything, I think doing this format has actually kind of helped me to maintain energy for reading and also made me be a little bit more intentional because I've tied reading with like certain parts of the day. So it's like, all right, I'm on lunch. I need to be reading this book. Whether I'm at home or out will also kind of say like, okay, I'm at home. I need to be physically reading this book. Okay, I'm out at lunch. I need to be reading this book on ebook. Like I said, audio unsurprising that that hasn't really changed at all for me. But I do think this is also the first time in quite a while that I've been like really making more time to try and physically read, which is good. So initially this experiment was really only planned for like 2 weeks, but it may turn into like the rest of March. And then I don't know, we'll see moving forward, which I end up doing, whether I maintain this like reading numerous books at a time, or if I do decide to go back to only bouncing between 1 or 2. One way or another, this was a fun reading blog just to kind of play around with my reading routine and see like what areas can I improve and how does making these changes affect my reading life. So on that note, that is officially it for today, y'all. Thank you so much for coming to my channel. I really appreciate it. Make sure to hit like and subscribe down below. If you made it all the way to the end of this video, let's leave some sort of a clock emoji down in the comments. I have links to all of my socials as well as a few ways you can support me down in the description. I come out with videos on Monday and Friday, but until then, I hope you continue to have a terrific day. Love you. Bye.